You're sitting on the couch, not doing anything particularly interesting, maybe watching TV, maybe scrolling your phone, and you look up and your dog is just staring at you. Not at the door, not at their food bowl, not at anything. At you, unblinking, completely still. Like you're the most fascinating thing that has ever existed in the history of the universe. And most people do one of two things. They laugh it off. Or they get slightly uncomfortable and say, "What, buddy? What do you want?" Because the obvious explanation is hunger. Or they need to go outside. Or they want something. But here's what behavioral scientists have discovered. And this genuinely shocked the researchers who found it. Your dog is not staring at you because they want something. They're staring at you because of a neurological mechanism so ancient, so deep, and so specific to the bond between dogs and humans that no other relationship on Earth produces it. And once you understand what's actually happening behind those eyes, you will never look at your dog the same way again. Let's start with the obvious theory, because it deserves to be taken seriously before it gets demolished. Dogs stare because they're communicating a need. Hungry, bored, wants a walk, needs to go outside. And sure, sometimes that's true. But here's the problem with that explanation. Wolves communicate with each other constantly. Through body language, posture, vocalizations, and if you stare directly at a wolf, even one raised by humans from birth, it reads it as a threat, an act of dominance or aggression. It looks away, it submits, it leaves. Dogs don't do that. Dogs evolved a completely unique response to direct human eye contact that no other canine on Earth shares. Not wolves, not coyotes, not foxes, only dogs. The question isn't why your dog is asking for something. The question is, why did an entire species develop the ability to hold a human gaze, when every instinct in canine biology should make that impossible? The answer starts roughly 15,000 years ago, and it begins not with dogs, but with fire. When early humans built fires at night, they left scraps, bones, fat, marrow. The wolves who could approach closest without triggering human aggression ate. The wolves who fled at every glance starved. Over generations, the selection pressure was ruthless and simple. The wolves most capable of reading human faces survived. Not the biggest wolves, not the fastest. The ones with the most finely tuned ability to interpret human emotional expression. Because a human face tells you everything: threat or safety, anger or invitation. Come closer or run. And the wolves who could read that signal, and who could return it without triggering a violent response, didn't just survive. They thrived. They were fed. They were kept close. They reproduced. Over thousands of years, that ability didn't just improve. It transformed into something no one predicted. In 2015, researchers at Azabu University in Japan ran a study that got published in Science, one of the most prestigious scientific journals on the planet. And the finding was so surprising that several reviewers initially questioned whether it could possibly be real. They brought 30 dog owner pairs into a lab. They measured oxytocin levels before and after a period of gazing interaction. Oxytocin is the bonding neurochemical, the molecule that floods a new mother's brain when she holds her infant, the one that fires when you hug someone you love. Scientists sometimes call it the love hormone, though that undersells how profound it is. Here's what they found. When a dog gazes at their owner and the owner gazes back, both of them experience a surge in oxytocin. At the same time, across species, the dog's oxytocin spikes, the owner's oxytocin spikes, which makes the dog want to gaze more, which releases more oxytocin, which makes the owner feel more bonded, which makes them hold the gaze longer. It's a loop, a self-reinforcing neurochemical feedback loop that bypasses language, bypasses conscious thought, and operates entirely through eye contact. And they tested the same experiment with wolves raised by humans from puppyhood. Wolves who were familiar with people, comfortable around them, socialized. The loop didn't activate at all. This is not a general mammal thing. This is not just what happens when two animals spend time together. This mechanism co-evolved specifically between dogs and humans, over 15,000 years of living side by side. It was selected for, generation after generation, because it worked. Because it deepened the bond. Because the dogs who could trigger oxytocin in humans were fed, protected, and loved, and passed those genes on. Your dog isn't staring at you. Your dog is dosing you. But oxytocin is only part of the story, because there's another layer to the stare that researchers discovered, and this one lives not in chemistry, but in anatomy. Dogs are the only non-human animal that looks to the left side of a human face when processing emotional expression. This is called the left gaze bias. And it's significant because the left side of a human face is controlled by the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the hemisphere that processes and expresses emotion most intensely. The left side of your face is your more emotionally expressive side. Humans look to the left side of other human faces automatically and unconsciously when reading emotion. No other animal does this. Not primates, not cats, not wolves. Only dogs. Dogs were shaped, across millennia, to read the most emotionally informative part of the human face with the same precision that we read each other. When your dog stares at you, they are not looking at you. They are reading you, processing your emotional state with a level of accuracy and attention that most humans don't apply to other humans. They know if you're sad before you've admitted it to yourself. They know if you're anxious before you felt the feeling fully. They know if something is wrong. The stare isn't random, it's data collection. And the database they're running it against is you, your specific face, your specific expressions, your specific baseline of what normal looks like. Now here's a finding that almost nobody knows about, because it came out of a field most people don't follow. Researchers in cognitive ethology, the study of animal minds, have found that dogs understand the difference between a human who can help them and a human who won't. In the experiment, dogs were given a problem they couldn't solve, a container with food they couldn't open. There were two types of humans in the room. One was willing to help, but unable. The other was able to help but unwilling. They just refused, turned away, ignored the dog. Dogs stared far longer and far more persistently at the human who was choosing not to help, not the one who couldn't. Think about what that means. Your dog isn't just staring because they want something. They are making a deliberate assessment of your intentions. They understand the difference between can't and won't. They are gauging whether you are choosing to engage. The stare is not a blank request. It is a targeted social appeal, aimed at a mind your dog has already identified as capable of understanding them. There's a researcher named Julianne Kaminsky at the University of Portsmouth who has spent years studying dog cognition. And one of her findings upended a common assumption that dog owners make constantly. People assume their dog's facial expressions are involuntary. Just reflex. Dogs make puppy eyes because their face muscles do that, not because they're choosing to. Kaminsky's research found otherwise. Dogs produce significantly more facial movements, including the inner brow raise that creates the puppy eyes expression, when a human is watching them. When the human's back is turned, the expressions drop dramatically. They're not reflexive, they're performed, deliberately. For you, your dog has learned, through thousands of years of coevolution and through their own individual experience with you, that certain facial expressions produce certain responses in humans. And they deploy those expressions consciously, in moments of direct eye contact to communicate. The stare isn't passive, it's a conversation opener. Your dog is waiting for you to respond. Now I want to talk about something that sounds almost impossible, but the data is very hard to argue with. Multiple studies across institutions, including the University of Vienna and Goldsmiths University of London, have found that dogs can identify the emotional valence of human facial expressions, happy versus angry, and that they respond to them differently even in photographs of strangers. Photographs of strangers, no smell, no voice, no context, just a face. They can do this with human faces and dog faces, and they store this information. In a 2016 study, dogs were trained to recognize either happy or angry faces, and when tested 6 months later with new photos of different people, they remembered which expression type to look for. They don't just read emotion, they remember emotional patterns. They build models, which means every single time your dog has stared at your face over months and years, they have been building an increasingly detailed map of you, your micro-expressions, your tells, the way your jaw sets when you're stressed, the way your eyes change when you're happy, but trying not to show it. They know you, possibly better than you know yourself. So let's bring this back to the moment. You're on the couch. Your dog is staring at you. Here's what is actually happening. Their visual cortex is processing the left side of your face with specialized neural architecture that was shaped over 15,000 years, specifically to read human emotion. Their brain is comparing what they see against a detailed internal model they've built of your specific emotional patterns. They are assessing your intentions, your mood, your availability for connection. And if you hold their gaze, really hold it. A neurochemical cascade is beginning in both of you that deepens the bond between your nervous systems in a way that no drug company has ever been able to replicate. This is not your dog being weird. This is one of the most sophisticated cross-species communication systems that has ever evolved on this planet. There's one more thing, and I want you to pay attention to this part. If your dog, who has stared at you reliably for years, suddenly stops making eye contact, don't dismiss it. Veterinary behaviorists have identified gaze avoidance as one of the earliest detectable signs of depression in dogs. Not aggression, not lethargy, not loss of appetite. Eye contact avoidance comes first. It also appears in the early stages of vision problems. Dogs who are beginning to lose their sight will sometimes avoid direct eye contact because they've learned it triggers interaction they can no longer fully process. And in dogs with early-stage cognitive dysfunction, canine dementia, the recognition response that drives the gaze begins to degrade. Your dog isn't choosing to stop looking at you. They're losing the neurological mechanism that made them want to. If the stare disappears, your dog is telling you something, in the only language they have. Pay attention. So the next time your dog locks eyes with you across the room, for no reason, in the middle of a Tuesday while you're doing absolutely nothing, remember what's actually happening. 15,000 years of evolution. A neurochemical loop that no other species on Earth shares with us. Neural architecture shaped to read your face with more precision than most humans manage. And an internal model built over years of watching you that maps your emotional world with extraordinary accuracy. Your dog isn't staring at you for no reason. They're staring at you because you are the most important thing in their world. And they are making absolutely sure they understand how you're doing. That's not a pet behavior. That's love with a neuroscience degree. If this changed the way you see your dog, subscribe. And tell me in the comments, does your dog stare at you? And have you ever felt like they knew something about how you were feeling before you did? Because based on what you just learned, they probably did.